Hi everyone, welcome to episode 2 of My Campus GPS Facebook Live. This is a place where we talk about how parents can help their high school student prepare for university. Tonight is part 2 of why grade 11 is so important for scholarships. So in my first Facebook Live, I talked about how grade 11 activities can affect scholarship applications. And tonight we're going to talk about how grade 11 marks can affect both admission and scholarships. So tonight we're mainly focusing on university admission and university entrance scholarships. I'm Janet McDonald, and I'm a former university admissions officer. I've worked in a university for over 10 years in the areas of admissions and academic advising and scholarship programming. And now with My Campus GPS, I help high school students and parents with the process of applying to university. So I help with admission and career exploration and scholarship preparation. So before I dive into the meat and potatoes of the information tonight, I really need to give that flashing disclaimer because not all universities operate in the exact same way. It would be really nice and simple, I guess, or simpler anyway if they did, but they don't. So the information that I'm going to give you tonight, it may or may not apply to your student. The chances are good that it does, but I can't say with any certainty that this is exactly the way that it's going to work for your student. Each university is different, every student is different, they apply at different times, so there are a lot of variables that can affect the outcome. But most universities do operate in a similar way, so what I'm going to tell you tonight is really what will happen with most universities, most of the time, generally speaking. Okay, so that's my disclaimer. So you should really look at the websites, the admissions pages for the university that your student is thinking of applying to, and if the information is not really clear to you, then contact the university directly and inquire about their process. Okay, so on with the show. So when I was an admissions officer and I was recruiting in the high schools and so on, one of the most common questions I got was, do grade 11 marks matter? And I can say with some certainty that in most cases, absolutely. Grade 11 marks do matter, and they probably matter a little bit more than what you probably realize. So most of the time, grade 11 marks matter for both admissions and scholarships. And this is quite confusing, the information that I'm going to give to you, but I'm going to try to do it in the simplest way possible. So just as I said in episode 1 with scholarships, how a lot of it depends on timing, it's the same in this situation. So namely the timing of early admission for students to apply to universities. So most universities will open up their applications for admission in November of your student's grade 12 year. Some of them will open up earlier or later or whatever, but they start to open up around November, and then the different universities will have different deadlines to apply for early admission. Early admission meaning admission based on grades that are not final. So this is the time that students will apply for early admission and to be considered for scholarships as well. So as you probably know, the universities will require generally 5 or 6 grade 12 courses for admission. But if your student is applying obviously in November, December, January, even into March, they probably don't have 5 or 6 grade 12 courses completed, when they're applying for early admission. So admissions will likely, in this case, use a combination of grade 12 and grade 11 grades to work out the average for admission. So how does this work? What courses do they use for admission to determine your average? So to explain this, what I'll do is we'll start with the admission requirements. So all university degrees will require certain grade 12 courses, prerequisite courses for admission into those programs. So for example, if your student is applying for a Bachelor of Engineering degree, then there are certain grade 12 prerequisites that are necessary to be admissible into that program. Most universities in Canada, it's grade 12 English, grade 12 like pre-cal or calculus math, physics, chemistry, and 1 or 2 other courses. So if a student applies to a Bachelor of Engineering program, admissions will use the grades from those courses, from English, pre-cal or calculus, physics, chemistry, and 1 or 2 other courses, to calculate the student's admission average. So another example would be a Bachelor of Arts program. For most Bachelor of Arts programs, most universities will require English 12 and 4 or 5 other grade 12 courses. So, and there might be some specific requirements depending on which university you're applying to. These are the courses that, the required courses are the courses that the admissions office is going to use, excuse me, in your average. So your admission average is not just, all the courses you've taken in grade 12 and all the courses you've taken in grade 11, or your top 5 or 6 grades in whatever courses. The admissions needs to use the courses that are required for the program that you have applied to. So that's why it's called the admission average, because they're using the courses that are required for admission. So just as a side note, you might be wondering, what are these other courses that you're talking about? So the other courses are kind of ones that are still required, but they're not specific prerequisites for that course. So if you look at university admissions pages, they will often have like a list of acceptable courses. So those are the other courses that I'm talking about. And usually if admissions has a choice of what courses they can use in these other courses, so if they have 2 that they can choose from, they will normally choose the course with the higher grade. Okay, so that can work to your advantage, which is really good. So back to these courses that are required for admission. You are required to have 5 or 6 grade 12 courses. Most students don't have 5 or 6 courses completed when they apply for early admission. So admissions will use a combination of grade 12 and grade 11 courses, and what grades they use will depend on what program you have applied for. So how can these grade 11 courses be used in that average? So I'll give you a very simple example of how this can work. So let's say that your student is applying for a Bachelor of Arts program. So in that case, they would be required to have English 12 and 4 or 5 other acceptable courses. So now let's say that your student is taking English 12 in second semester, but if they're applying for early admission, they won't have a grade 12 English grade because they're taking it in second semester. So admissions will go back to grade 11 and use the grade 11 English grade as a predictor for that grade 12 English grade. So that's how that grade 11 grade can now be used in that admissions average. Okay, so you see how that works? So that all of a sudden, now your grade 11 English mark is being used in your average for admission into the program that you're applying for. So how does all of this affect your scholarships? So with most universities, what they will do is they will use the admission average as the scholarship average. So if your admission average is 87%, then your scholarship average will be 87%. That will be the scholarship, that will be the average that they will use to offer you a scholarship or not. Okay? So now you can see how that grade 11 English grade is now factored into both your admission into the university, into that program, and it's factored into your scholarship offer as well. So again, flashing disclaimer, this may not be exactly how it works for your student, but it may, and the chances are quite good that it will. So the big takeaway here tonight is that there is a good chance that at least some grade 11 grades will be factored into both admissions and scholarships in grade 12. So obviously it's really important to do your best both in grade 11 and in grade 12. So this is admittedly quite confusing, the way that this works, and so if you would like it in written form, I actually wrote a blog about this. It's called Yes, Grade 11 Marks Matter, and it's on my award-winning blog, and you can get that at mycampusgps.ca/blog. I'll put it in the notes below so that you can have a look at that, and it'll be a good refresher for you. Now, if your student is taking IB or AP, there will probably be a separate, kind of application and admissions process for that. So it'll be really important that you check out the webpage for the university that your student is applying to and find out what their process is for IB and AP, because it'll be a little bit different. Now, I didn't mention external scholarships. So I've been talking about the scholarships that are awarded by the universities, or offered by the universities. As far as external scholarships, and by that I mean all scholarships offered by organizations outside of a university, so banks and charitable organizations and community groups and that kind of thing. Not all of those scholarships will have any kind of requirement on them. They may not have an average that is required, but if they do, then there are hundreds of those ones, and I don't have an idea on how they all do that. So the best thing to do is to contact them if you are curious and if you want to find out whether or not you qualify. But I would just generally say that if you think that you qualify for that scholarship, then absolutely apply. But if you're not sure and you want to check it out, then contact the organization directly. So, wow, that's a lot of information that I laid on you tonight. I hope you found that helpful. If you did, I would really appreciate it if you would give me, a thumbs up, and pass this information along, share it with anyone who you think may benefit from it. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them below. Even if you're not watching this live, I'll still be checking the comments and answering any questions over the next few days. If you'd like to find out more about my services, I'm at mycampusgps.ca, and I look forward to seeing you again here next week. Thanks.